quiz on this later.
No, not today. All right. Good evening. I will call to order the regular meeting of the Granada Community Services District for Thursday, February 18th, 2016. And we will start with the roll call as usual.
President Matthew Clark.
I'm here.
Vice President Jim Blanchard.
Here.
Director Rick Woman.
Here.
Director Dick Seaton.
Here.
Director Leonard Warren.
Present.
And at the table is General Manager Chuck Duffy, our legal counsel Jonathan Whitler, and I'm the Assistant Manager Julia Keener.
All right. As usual, we will start with general public participation for anyone who'd like to speak on any item that is not on the agenda. I don't have any speaker slips. I will remind people that if they would like to speak on items on the agenda, we do need a speaker slip, please.
Okay.
Here's one.
Is that a first? Actually running out of speaker slips.
Okay, go first.
Oh, this is just real quick an announcement. April 16th, which is a Saturday, is going to be Coastal Wildflower Day. It's also during Earth Week. There's a big group of local nurseries, the state parks auxiliary associations. I think the Marine Mammal Group and a bunch of people are going to be sort of running the Half Moon Bay State Beach on April 16th. It's about 6 hours of kid activities, learning about the earth and flowers and wildflowers on the coast, and a whole bunch of very interesting activities. So mark it in your calendars for April 16th. Technically, the chief sponsor is my group, the Coastside State Parks Association. But state parks is huge in this also. So it's just, there's like 6 or 7 major groups helping to run this. So this is the 3rd year, and every year it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. There'll be a food truck there and all that kind of goodies.
Thank you. Director Warren.
For the board and the public, the newer chairs were purchased by Mid-Coast Community Council because they've had some recent meetings in this room where there was a lot more people than chairs.
Thank you, MCC. I guess we're ours now.
Well, as long as we let them meet in this room, I suppose.
Yes,
They're gonna take their chairs and leave if you don't.
they might. All right.
And then real quick, I wanted to mention something not on the agenda. So last week we talked a little bit about agency cooperation. I think we got a little bit off topic in terms of thinking big picture. One of the outcomes of it is I did hear a lot of, in terms of points of agreement, there was a need for potentially GIS system. I don't know if Leonard, if you want to explain more about why there might be, it might be in everyone's vested interest in terms of all the different agencies to put their head together around that instead of moving, isolated. Do you have any input on that?
Well, maybe, but it's not on the agenda.
Okay, so maybe we could talk about that later, but it just seemed like an area where people, on the board, people of the public, different boards mentioned that that's an area where, I think starting point where we put our heads together and, there's efficiencies that can be gained from working together. So I think, we could talk down the road. Chuck had mentioned that you wanted to push it to another, you wanted me to bring in more, financials in terms of where we could, save over time and stuff, and so we could push that back. But, I just wanted to bring up an area where I think, as far as efficiency, there's improvements. And then the second thing that one of the board members brought up was about the ongoing pollution that has been going on, and, no one's really done anything about it. Kellex had a report, which was kind of inconclusive. And so, my only thing on that is, how come I feel like the only people losing sleep over that are, surfers and people like Kellex? How come there's no public, official that is being held accountable for the ongoing pollution that everyone just wants to, say is inconclusive, not sure, but how come there's no accountability around that? And I'm asking you, Chuck.
Yeah, I guess the answer to that is that doesn't have anything to do with us. It has to do with the county health department. And Kellex, I wouldn't call Kellex report inconclusive because it did identify sources upstream, which were generally of animal waste and whatnot, and that is a enclosed area that doesn't get flushing. So there's nothing in our charter that would allow us to do anything about that. So efforts to clean that up would have to probably go through Kellex and go through the county department.
And so that has nothing to do with Sam at all?
Nope.
Nothing to do with sewer or
And,
Sam or.
and so how do we facilitate that, you know, dialogue about, obviously, they're not treating it like it's an urgency, you know, it's kind of being ignored at that level.
You'd have to do it as either a private citizen or get Kellex in touch with the county department of public health and kind of work.
And so
through
there's
that.
no, in terms of septic tanks or anything else that people have had theories about that could be causing some of the other potential pollution, that has nothing to do with us potentially, if that is
Correct.
something?
Yeah, that has nothing to do with us.
Okay, so.
So we're kind of, yeah, I understand your concern and it's valid concern, but.
Well, I
it's
mean,
not-
the
it's not
idea
our
is that there
charter.
could be potentially, you know, leaks that are, we are responsible that we're missing somehow.
Well,
you
we
know.
did a pretty thorough investigation because this item came up, David, you know, I think in 2002, right about I was coming on board, and we did dye testing and things like that. We sealed our line, we packed our line with a special type of, kind of a clayey substance but we never, there was never any.
And so the answer is
Evidence.
really nothing can be done. Is that really
Well,
what?
I would just,
No,
I would just
I
like to add that we contributed, you know, financially to the big studies, all the DNA studies, but all the DNA studies showed it's nothing to do with the Granada Community Services District, so we can continue to help probably in the future. If other studies are launched, we can always contribute something, but we can't go tell the harbor to fix something or something like
Yeah,
that. 'cause
it's not a sewer-related
So,
problem,
yeah.
is the answer. So can things be done? Yes, but it's not under the charter of your board.
All right, thank you. We will move to action agenda item number 1, consideration of prioritized list of community parks and recreation services and facilities needs for the upcoming year and related park advisory committee recommendations. And I'd like to start by thanking the Parks Advisory Committee and all the members and the chair and vice chair, and also particularly our Assistant General Manager, Delia Tomato, for the work that, and consideration and time that has gone into this. I think people probably discovered, like, it seems like a small district until you start looking at it in detail like this, and then it's pretty big. So, thank you. I think, Delia, would you like to start, please?
All right, the item before the board's for consideration is to approve a prioritized list of community parks and recreation needs for the upcoming year. This is in accordance with the county agreement. The county agreement is for them to assist us to get off the ground and implement some parks and services. So we're doing this pursuant to the agreement. The district is required under the agreement to provide this list by the end of February. And at the last meeting, the board tasked the Park Advisory Committee to prepare their recommendations of the prioritized community needs. So they utilized basically results from our survey that we did this time last year, where we surveyed our community, and we got over 600 responses that we had, and we analyzed those. And also they used the 2015, the 2007 Mid-Coast Action Plan and the 2002 Mid-Coast Needs Assessment as well. And the individual committee members solicited other residents in the community, their neighbors, friends that live here, to find out what, you know, their needs were. So that's what went into the committee's results, which will be presented tonight. The committee actually held 2 meetings, one on January 26th and one on February 8th. And they actually approved they came up with 12 priority needs, and we've provided those needs listed in the board packets. They also, Pat Tierney, the chair of the committee, also put together the justifications for each of the priorities. They're listed in priority order. And tonight we have, unfortunately, Pat Tierney cannot be here tonight, but in his place is the vice chair, and that's Paul Kolsch. Kolsch, sorry about that. And we also have here is Sam Hersberg from San Mateo County Parks with us as well to answer any questions that the board may have. As far as the county's role, what will happen is once our board approves a prioritized list, it will go to the county, and the county will prepare an action plan to assist us to implement those needs and facilities. So,
Can we
Mhm.
pause? Looks like Steve has an issue with sound.
Yeah, we will.
Uh,
Better now.
Can you hear me?
You're fine.
Okay. All right. Well, if you don't mind, I'll introduce Paul, and he'll come up and answer questions from the board, maybe run through the list. I do have copies of the list that the committee, their priorities are in the back table there, if anybody would like to see those. It's about 3 pages, two-sided. Yeah, you have to kind of split them up because I didn't have time to.
Is that what's in the package?
Yes, it's exactly what was provided to you as well. So, Paul.
Is there a typo on one page? I finally found what PRS is, but then in one place at the top of the unnumbered third page, it says RPS. Is that a typo for PRS?
I'm not sure. Paul, do you know what he's referring to?
Yeah, I'd say so, because it's the survey, the 2015 survey,
What,
and the 2015, I'd say so.
the public opinion survey is what it stands for.
Okay, so that's just a typo on the third page then.
Yeah. Okay, Paul.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Paul Kelsch. I am co-chair for the advisory panel for the Parks and Recreation. And yeah, as Delia said, I'm here for Pat, and in his place, I should say. Anyway, but we'd like to start off by thanking the board, you guys, for creating the panel and making the appointments so we can, generate recreational opportunities and parks for the community. And for starters, I'd like to thank Pat. He really spearheaded the list, and he really did compile the justifications, and he does that stuff. He does it really well and quickly. I mean, he's a good guy to have in your group if you're doing a project, Everyone comes out looking good. So I'd like to thank Delia. She's very knowledgeable and helpful, and you've provided us with a lot of direction. And thank the county reps, Sam, and is Marlene, is that? Yeah. They've been spending a lot of time with us, giving us their guidance. And for members of the board here, we have Ben and Owen. They're here tonight. So I'll just start with some background for the list. We came up with those 12 points, and we basically came up with a list of our own ideas, and then a lot of them were the same, and we put them together. When I say they're our own ideas, it's, yeah, a lot of them we brought forth ourselves, but I think, everyone has talked to people in the community over the years, and then also based upon the surveys that were referenced earlier, that was really a good starting point and provided a lot of traction for generating this list. And then how we prioritized was at the last meeting, we held kind of a vote off, I guess. And everyone had, yeah, it was right there. There it is. And yeah, so that actually worked out quite efficiently. Generated the priorities as you see them in that order. So, I guess for that reason, it really, I'd say, it quite accurately represents the views of our panel, fairly evenly per member. I guess as far as the list goes, I think, it looks like everyone's got one. I definitely hope everyone gets a chance to look through it, because there's a lot of information there that, as far as going over, for me to go over, would you like me to just start reading the different items? Is that how you guys would prefer?
I think you can probably go through the items, but there are a lot of bullet points, so maybe you can make a couple of comments if you'd like about each item, but.
Yeah.
We can't have all these
Yeah.
bullet points.
Yeah,
are in.
Delia and I talked about that, maybe just read, like Matthew says, 12 bullet points, and if you feel the need to editorialize on anything.
I think
Yeah.
that'd be great for the TV audience, because they can't read
Yeah.
this,
Yeah,
so they can hear all your options.
Yeah.
okay, oh, great. So, so anyway, the first item is develop a trail and amenities plan for El Granada medians. The first implementation on median 11, which we have on a map, is it's on Portola. It's essentially right near the post office in the center of town. And start that as soon as possible. And that's so we really show the community that we are actually, getting stuff accomplished. So as far as justifications for that, median strip improvements was ranked second highest on the 2015 community interest survey. And also it was second highest in the 2007 Mid-Coast Action Plan. And our group found that many of the medians already have, existing trails. So we thought it would be good to add to that, and essentially, we think that the layout of the medians do provide, access to travel, throughout, part of El Granada. And it would be a nice way to have a trail for, multi-use trail for people to do so, whether there's going from point A to point B or go out and, recreate. So,
It was Burnham's explicitly stated intent that the medians were to be linear parks, so that anybody could walk from their house and through the linear park to the center of town.
So item number 1, if you will, you're looking at developing a trail through median number 11 as priority number 1?
And I have a question. How is the board supposed to know where the numbers are? We didn't get a map.
I apologize, I didn't pick it up. I think I should just leave this map out all the time.
well, I think the list refers to median 11 and median 8. So,
So median 11 is here?
yeah, median 11 is this one.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, right here.
And then 8 is Balboa Circle. So
Yeah,
you point
Balboa
to-
Circle.
So up here.
Yeah. So, at this point, that's really the only ones that have been referenced, and that was at a suggestion of Sam's to pick, because you start talking about a whole plan, but pick something to pilot, have a pilot, pilot segment. And, so that's the implementation, that's why we refer to median 11 for the trail, because, it's right in the center of town. There's already some, historical interest signage there. It really is a good starting point as far as it being, right off the, the starting point in El Granada there.
Why would you not specify 11, 12, and 13 for the first part of the trail? Because
I think really that was because the issue having to do with tree maintenance. I think because if we started to look at the whole thing and just the quantity of trees, and I don't know what the scope of that project, would be. So we did get some tree estimates for, and some analysis just done for those two medians. So that was really part of it too, was taking a look at the trees, getting some expert, analysis of the situation, just to have like a little starting point the whole project.
And I think that's something your board could, if you want to do what Leonard's talking about, look at those 3 meetings, that would be part of your approval process here.
And I think we should. The county is maintaining some of the trees down to the ground.
Maintaining, I mean with a chainsaw.
Yes. Currently, in the last few days, on 11 and some on Balboa as well. And we have a lot more, which are the Monterey pines who are at the end of their lives. So,
Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah, so we learned a bit about that just in the reports we got. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The trees, could potentially pose safety issues, And so, yeah, that was something we had to kind of start just by taking a little bite of. So that's sort of the idea with the pilot median for the trail being 11, kind of as like the gateway to the rest of the medians. So, yeah, I guess, is there any questions, any other questions about recommendation 1? At this time?
I have a comment, which is, it's not in any of the bullet points, but for access, we should consider cutting the curbs and putting in ramps at all the ends of these trails.
Yeah, we did have a gentleman from the county, but I don't remember his name, but he was okay, yeah, David Vasquez. He's an ADA, was he compliance officer type? Yeah. So, okay, yeah, so he was there, and he presented to us, essentially the issues with that in a more general, without really working through like we didn't work through a comprehensive plan of the medians, but we just got like basically our feet wet in that regards, because, some of us on the panel have experience with that and some of us don't, so, it was definitely, So in regard to the cutting of the curbs, I think our plan would be to follow, make ADA compliance, it would have to be considered, that was, the idea there, so.
I don't even think that's.
I don't know if I answered
It's
the
not even
question.
optional, I don't think.
Only if
Probably
we
not.
can do it without having those stupid bumpy things painted yellow. Seriously, I'm dead serious about that.
I think we could do beige, that's
If I
good.
can just add a comment, when we started looking at the committee started looking at the median improvement, we realized there's quite a bit of area there to cover, and a lot of trees, as Paul had said, to address, and a lot of issues, and there probably should be more of a long-term plan, which the committee all agreed to, and so they were using the medians 8 and 11 as test pilots, because they were the most popular ones, or the ones most visual and used and known, and 8, I think, for its size, because it was size that could be utilized for possibly implementing some type of playground or facilities like that, and 11 because of its central location near the post office in the downtown. And in looking at ADA compliance, that again is a costly thing. It is something that they certainly want to look into, but they would want it to be implemented at one time in order to save the costs, rather than doing it, median by median. So I think the purpose of this priority list and getting something going would just be to start with the priorities that they've listed here for, that include medians 8 and 11, and then anything additional would be taken into consideration for a more long-term plan of further implementing improvements to all the medians.
But that's more county responsibility, so we certainly shouldn't be taking on anywhere near the full cost of doing that.
If we're gonna be implementing parks facilities, the issue.
The county owns the property owner is the one
Right,
responsible.
and we have a sample agreement that we passed on to our council, and we will have to have something in place before we implement anything, any improvements on the medians.
And what I'm saying goes triple regarding the trees, because this district in 100 years doesn't have enough revenue to deal with all the trees.
Right.
Because all of the big trees here, this was said to me by a local expert more than 10 years ago. So what I'm about to say, keep in mind that he said this 10 years ago or so, that all of the trees on the coast side, particularly out of Granada, are 90 to 100 years old with a lifespan, no, he said they're all 90 years old with a lifspan of 90 to 100 years, which means about now, they're all gonna start falling down.
Right, well,
And it can cost thousands of dollars to deal with one.
we've seen, we've seen the estimate. However, the community very loudly spoke about improvements in the medians, and it is an opportunity for the district to utilize the lands without having to purchase land, which is also very costly. And it's all throughout the community, throughout the community that could be possibly utilized, and so that's what.
But even if we didn't, the county still has to deal with a lot of the trees, and so anything that really is the county's responsibility, I don't think we should take on the expense of that. We can probably do some tree maintenance, but any trees that have to be taken down, the county's gonna have to do that.
The issue, I think, is liability. If there's a park facility, we want to make sure it's safe, that's all. And I think that the county has been more than willing to work with the district, and that's certainly something that I think we can discuss with them, so that we're not absorbing the entire cost of the trees. And as President Clark mentioned, there is some tree maintenance going on right now, so they're taking.
Let's be really clear, when you're talking about tree maintenance, what you mean is the county's picking on the trees most at risk and just cutting them down. That's not really maintenance.
But it's the only thing that can be done.
Yeah.
Some, yeah.
Do we have any of them dragged over to our property here?
Working on it.
The eucalyptus are gonna be here for who knows how long, so.
Yeah.
It's just the California natives that we're talking about.
Well, one of the things that potentially the district could partner on, maybe with interested community members, is controlling the, what the heck do you call it, the opportunistic things, where the eucalyptus sprout. You have the most experience of any of us with that, right? But where you have the little things sprouting up near the big trees, you have to have a really aggressive program of stamping those out.
Okay, so number 1 is a trail through median 11. Number 2 is a small neighborhood park in median number 8, which is the Balboa Circle.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Actually, before we go on, I have a question. When you say that there's support for keeping the trails narrow, can you put a number on that? Are we talking like 4 feet or something?
I can't, no. I think, it's a general opinion of the panel to keep things, as, blending in with the feel of El Granada, as much as possible. Obviously, a trail wouldn't be there'd be some improvement involved, but, yeah, I don't think we got that, we definitely didn't get that specific.
And Jim is pointing out to me the bicycle access, so I would think that the appropriate trail width is basically what would allow bicycles to pass in opposite directions without getting handlebars tangled up.
And we could, that's a level of detail the county can provide us with when we get
Yeah,
to that.
but the county built a 2-lane freeway through Moss Beach, so we
But
don't.
Sam wasn't in charge of that, so I got to pay for Sam.
So, we have to be careful of what. the
We have
county-
final approval at the
Yeah.
end of the day, so.
So, okay, Suggestion 2, yeah, a small active part in median number 8, Balboa Circle, and implementation as soon as possible. So, you know, we have needs for, especially in this median number 8 area. If you look, there's El Granada Elementary, and then there's Clipper Ridge Park, but that area of El Granada is really just, does not have any park, you know?
This map represents, of course, parcel map, and the red flags here show where our small playgrounds are located. The school, Quarry Park, and over in Clipper Ridge, so.
So the proposed park is
Yes,
up here.
kind of gives us one in the middle there.
Now, the neighbors there have done probably more stuff there than neighbors anywhere else in the district. So I'm wondering, is the committee's suggestion consistent, you know, reasonably consistent with whatever the neighbors have done?
Well, we did have a neighbor come in and make a suggestion. He requested some sort of half-court basketball court.
Is it really big enough?
And
Yeah, it's pretty big.
number 8 will address, if you can let me get through the list. There are some more issues relating to the medians in there, so.
But anyway, you know, some other ideas were, you know, basketball courts, there's pitching mounds there, you know, a bicycle pump track, and, you know, nature play areas. So, you know, that would be, you know, something representative, I mean, that, you know, of all, you know, different ages, basically. But yeah, that's, the need for parks is backed up by the surveys. And there is a standard, national and state standard suggests neighborhood parks should be every quarter to half mile in a developed community. So that's what I was talking about as far as proximity to other parks, so.
So,
I think
for those who don't really know the scale of El Granada, this distance here is about a mile. Because it takes me 20 minutes to walk it.
All right, then number 3 is the berm strip.
So, number 3 is protect the Burnham Strip and acquire properties as it becomes available. That, you know, that is, you know, I guess, been an interest for quite some time. And
And that was defined as a priority in the Midcoast Action Plan, you know, to protect that view corridor.
yeah, I think too, you know, there's interest to more or less have that open and available for the public, you know, just, you know, for, just as public space, for open space, for, you know, for parks, and, you know, whatever different improvements that would be, you know, usable for the public. And then,
Does Marina Green, that consistent with what the committee would visualize for that? Because many of us in the community have basically talked about that for quite a number of years. San Francisco's Marina Green is the model for the Burnham Strip, where it's just ad hoc area for people to do whatever they want.
It's a broad lawn.
Yeah.
you know, I guess we did not get into too much detail really that I can speak to, because, I mean, I think we really talked more detail about the medians. I think that was the feeling of the direction we were given to go. So, yeah, I would hate to, you know, I would hate to speak for the board on that one, as far as it being that specific. or I shouldn't say the board, the panel, the
Committee.
advisory panel. And then we have, number 4 is develop and implement a general tree management plan for all of El Granada. Oh, let me back up. I did miss a point on the Burnham Strip. The PAC strongly feels now is time to purchase key property in the Burnham Strip currently for sale and as it becomes available. So I think that was kind of how that got brought up now, as opposed to waiting till, while we're working on the medians, is because there's, property for sale now, at any time, so. Anyway, moving on to 4. Develop and implement a general tree management plan for all El Granada medians with specific recommendations for median number 8 and median number 11. So that stems from our ideas to do pilot medians, just to start with something, and get something started. And so that is taking the trees into account. I don't think we have, we don't have any specific suggestions there, because I think there's a lot of expertise required, but we did get some reports from a couple different tree specialists, and they do. Some of them say some of the trees are, there could be work done, and some say some trees are left that they really are at the end of their life. So so that's basically something that would need. I don't know if it needs to be sorted out so much, but it's going to have to be considered.
I think basically that will be integrated with the other plans, so when they decide where the trail goes through, or if they decide where they're going to build a neighborhood park, we have to make sure that there's not some widowmakers hanging over the neighborhood park, so.
Yeah, exactly.
But essentially, every one of those 100-year-old trees is in that category.
Right, but unless you wanna go through all the medians and take out, I think we concentrate on whatever improvement we have and what's surrounding that, and go from there.
Can we find out if the county has plans to replace trees they're removing?
That's easy, they never have yet.
Oh, there have been some new trees planted. They haven't survived, but
Ones
there
over
have
here?
been some.
Ones over
It's
here.
that whole watering thing.
I understand that the neighbors on Balboa did this first block of Balboa, not the county.
I'm not surprised.
Okay, and number 5?
So number 5 is plan and develop a bike pump track. So that would be a recreational facility for bicycles, off-road bicycles. So this is the single most requested new recreational facility by the public at the PAC meetings, was for a bike pump track for children. There's been quite a bit of support for that, and it is very popular at this time.
Have you identified any locations?
Well,
It's still too preliminary.
I think that type of facility could be, there's various ways to do it, Maybe it could be, there could be like some portions here or there, maybe for different age groups, but I think there was definitely not a specific site in mind, but the possibility was raised that it could be, maybe it's possible to make an arrangement with another agency to build something on the property with some sort of arrangement. I know that's done in other cities, or I shouldn't say cities, but.
How much square footage would this likely be? I mean, are we talking a major fraction of an acre or a small fraction of an acre?
I would say, you would, I mean, I'm not an expert on it, but there would be, there's demand for quite a, for quite a bit of facility. Now, it could be done, you can get a lot in, in a surprisingly, in a certain amount of space, but, I don't think, nothing was pinned down exactly as to an actual number of size, but, I guess, I don't want to, say any specific number.
Yeah, I don't think for the principles of this item, I think we want to kind of look at the broad brush, and when we start getting into the details of how big's a pump track, we can start looking at the pump tracks, assuming your board approves these, priority lists,
So,
then we'll
so,
start getting
so to
into
me, why I think this is so important is because it says parents have indicated to have the funds, volunteers, and equipment needed to build it for the district. And so I look at that as, obviously there's priorities and everything else, but if that's really true, and we can help facilitate the, legal constraints in terms of making sure it's approved and, we're able to put together that type of coordination where it's basically done for free, to me, that's a model that could be carried on through every other median, whether it's little community gardens that people maintain. Because I think long-term, 10, 20 years, there's a lot of maintenance that's gonna be required if we're taking on the burden of everything versus, that type of model. If we could, I think this is one of the only communities that could do it realistically, because there are a lot of people that would put out their time and money in terms of doing that. If we could help facilitate the legal side of that to make sure that, and it's approved, to me, that's.
the legal and the land side, right? 'Cause
Yeah, that's what I mean, as part of that, in terms of, that could be carried forward in terms of using that same model, different people when we go to a different project that other people are passionate about, around there. And then I think it gives, it's gonna save money, and also the maintenance side of it is gonna become easier because people are gonna have a vested interest in maintaining it. So, I think that's something, how do we go about that side of it in terms of putting together that coordination where we can have,
Well, part of that-
Patrick could probably help us out a lot on that, because my understanding, at least in recent years, is that San Francisco, for new parks, basically the city comes up with the land and essentially turns it over to a neighborhood group to develop the park. And, we could probably use some similar model where, we come up with a location and maybe provide materials, and the members of the community do the design, we approve the design, and then they can build it. Our primary out-of-pocket cost is just the materials.
Yeah.
And this, it sounds like they might even provide the materials.
Well, there's not, it's a pump track, so it's dirt.
It's a shovel.
The materials are there, we
Yeah,
just
but
have to shape it.
is it all dirt?
I don't know enough about it, but.
Matt?
So, yeah, and I think you're right, David, it's a good collaboration between, each model will be different, whether they build it on a right-of-way, or county-owned land, or district-owned land.
yeah.
So we'll have
I mean, that, to me,
tailor
that's
it to
where
each one.
if there's a lot of support behind it, and we look at, to me, that's where we, need to focus our attention in
Right.
terms, because that's a side where, it's either, right now, it's people are just doing things, it's just being
Yeah.
done. So it's being done anyway, so how do we go about facilitating that so that,
Yeah, and
and then we could carry that forward as we,
Right, and
start
that's
to
the
improve
goal
other
of
meetings.
this item, is to
Yeah.
approve these priorities and then have the county do, because that's what they do for a living, actually
Yeah.
help us with the implementation of
Yeah.
this stuff.
Just one quick comment on the pump track, and number 7, the skate park, and even possibly the basketball courts, and maybe anything in general. I would just like to see a quick study real quick through staff or legal with our insurance group, because we're moving into, once we move into active sports, where people can break arms and legs and heads and stuff like
Right.
that. Just to make sure that we've got adequate coverage. I mean, for all the parks, people can break their leg walking down the sidewalk. So I'd just like to make sure that we've got appropriate insurance for all of these, before we.
Yeah, that's a good point, Rick, and we will.
Just 'cause
because-
it's-
Yeah, we alerted
We're now responsible.
Right, so we alerted our insurance company when we got
Okay.
Parks and Rec's powers, because it's a little different animal than just being a sewer district with
Yeah.
passive land with pipes underneath it, so.
So very specifically, we're gonna have to increase our amount of insurance.
Well, we're just gonna tell them what we're doing, and they're gonna tell us what
What
that
is-
costs, and, we'll have to shop around and do whatnot, so.
That's fine.
I'd like to see a list of people who have indicated they have funds. They'll volunteer and they have equipment for this particular
Yeah.
one,
Get some more information on that.
some real
If
commitment.
you
Yeah.
recall, there was actually a presentation made by PJ Monica to the board a
Yes.
couple of meetings ago, and that is the community members that he's referring to. They also made a presentation to the parks meeting, the park advisory committee as well.
And I also wanna point out, I appreciate we're trying to be collaborative and whatnot, but we also are a good funding source, because this is what our property tax money that we collect is for. So, I don't wanna lean on these people too much, I'd rather lean on them for help and whatnot, us provide the funding.
Well,
That's your board's decision, but just realize we do have that, we have that flexibility of, whatever money we wanna put aside to Parks and Recreation.
That's reasonably consistent with my suggestion, which is basically the district covers it so the people building it don't have out-of-pocket expenses. But, if they can provide the labor, and then they're more likely to get what they want, although we still have to, approve the design to make sure it doesn't unnecessarily increase our insurance costs.
I think there's, also, like some of the materials and maybe equipment, there was local businesses that were interested in donating. But like you said, we need more specifics, obviously.
That's good.
Okay, moving on to number 6. That one seems pretty simple.
Yeah,
Make
paint
the
utility
boxes look better.
boxes in medians, in the medians in the community.
You're talking about the phone company and
Yeah.
PG&E boxes?
Yeah, I think most probably, I'm guessing most of the above ground stuff is phone and
Yeah.
perhaps cable, but,
Well, the cable, the cable are the green boxes that are this high at the edge of the sidewalk. The big obnoxious things that you see in the middle of the riparian area on the district's Burnham Strip property, and totally blocking where the path should be at the end of Alameda. I want to shoot whoever put those boxes in that particular location. But those are all the worst ones belong to the phone company. Trust me on that.
yeah.
Including those big ugly black canisters on the overhead wires. Those are also phone company. So every bit of ugliness here is all phone company.
Okay, number 7, skate park.
Yeah, there's a lot of interest in a skate park. They, they're very popular in the community, as probably, throughout the state. There is a half pipe down by the highway there in the strip that, the community, some members of the community provided, and it's very popular. The only problem with it is it's small, so a lot of times, maybe younger kids can't have access to it if there's other kids there. And anyway, and it was definitely came up on the Mid-Coast Action Plan as a top priority. And people have come for us and requested a skate park. And it's another thing that, that's done in communities, and if we feel that, we could use some of them, other communities' parks as an example. So, it's an interest there.
Okay, number 8.
Hold a community event and information sessions about plans for medians and proposed recreation projects. So that is to essentially, inform the public and bring them in. bring them into the process here and get them interested.
I don't think that, no one has an issue with that, correct?
No, I mean, we should probably do
Yeah.
that sooner than later in terms of,
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
so I
mean-
think that's a good idea, so.
okay, cool.
I think the biggest problem is gonna be publicizing it so people are aware of it in advance.
Yeah.
We're not,
Yeah, I agree.
The good news is we're not, it's not like we're building a stadium in the middle of Granada or something. These are little neighborhood parks, so just, go to the
Can we
neighbors.
add that at the bottom of the list?
Yeah.
Maybe get the Clippers to do it.
We gotta build one in San Diego first.
I don't actually see it, well, it did say informal workshop about district plans, maybe especially at median 8, the location of proposed neighborhood park. I think that was part of the idea, maybe to get some additional input from the community as to, before we, from at the starting, at the, the beginning of this process, whether, instead of hearing about it later,
Right.
after the fact, so.
And Sam, I assume you guys can help us with outreach and whatnot? Okay.
And improve Clipper Ridge basketball courts. That was, Clipper Ridge Park was supported in the survey done recently. And I guess a recent upgrade did not include the Clipper Ridge basketball court. So I guess it's got some surface issues. And it did say the county's interested in transferring the park to the district. So that's something, I think, of interest for the board. Yeah, I don't know exactly, do you have any details on that, or?
Yeah. County Parks just recently upgraded that playground at Clipper Ridge. Maintenance of the playground is, if you're looking for opportunities to take on a recreational opportunity in your district, that's a playground that needs assistance. It's not a county park facility, we just improved the playground.
Who
And the-
actually owns the land?
It's, the Clipper Ridge, it is owned by the county.
That's what I thought.
And we work with the Clipper Ridge Neighborhood Association on the playground improvements.
Marlene was actually looking into, possibility of transferring the property over as well, from what I understand,
To the HOA or to us?
to the district, if we were to take it over, to see if it's a possibility.
We need to connect up with the HOA on that, because since their property taxes are part of the district's funds that are gonna be used for maintaining parks throughout the district, it's really only fair that we transfer maintaining that park with property tax money instead of their HOA money. So, we should have it somehow, I don't know how to open that discussion, but we should have that discussion with them, and I assume they'll be interested in that.
I was gonna say, it's
So-
gonna be a short discussion.
I mean,
We wanna pay to maintain. Oh,
But it
thank you.
means that we also take over responsibility for, maintaining the park, keeping
Right.
it, with their input, it basically then becomes our decision what the
Right.
park is.
Which makes sense, yeah.
and so I think there's an example of, I think it's kind of low-hanging fruit in terms of there's an existing facility, we just need to do a better job of maintaining. But that process for putting together an agreement, transferring land, that could take 1 year to 3 years. I think that's an example of if we're committed, some type of good faith agreement, what does it need, like nets primarily? Is that nets, and is it the pavement?
The pavement.
Pavement, and, I don't know, is it nets too, or there are nets that are up there?
I don't
thought somebody
know.
said that maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't know, either
I
way.
remember hearing that, but.
Either way, I think if, a good faith agreement that regardless of what gets settled, that, we have some funding that we could potentially look at some minor improvements, at least where you could play a decent game.
Absolutely.
And long-term, we figure out what the long-term maintenance plan is. If it falls apart, oh well, we're out of pocket a little bit, it didn't get transferred over, but at least we can make an impact right away instead of letting something like that linger in the political process of
Yeah, and that would
just things
hopefully be
taking time.
a quicker transition,
Yeah.
because if the county doesn't wanna own it and we do, and it's pretty straightforward then to transfer ownership
Yeah.
versus you're trying to figure out agreements on right of ways
Yeah.
and things like that, gets a little trickier, so.
What
I
is,
think we could expedite that.
Transfer probably would happen less than a year.
That's what I mean, that we could expedite that, because again, you don't want it, and if we do, it's two willing sellers, buyers.
what is the current, degraded basketball court surface?
Oh,
Asphalt.
I think it's
I think
pavement.
it's asphalt, yeah.
Yeah.
I think there are some public-spirited construction companies here on the coast side that could be approached about donations of materials and engineering help and things.
Well, I would like to see proposals for a surface other than asphalt, since I have a categorical opposition to asphalt under all conditions.
Well, that's nice, but you ever play basketball?
Right.
Not since high school.
Okay.
Concrete's expensive and beats up your legs.
How about rubber?
It's expensive too, but we can, that's down the road, we can look at that.
Was there any discussion, I'm just wondering now about, whether it's somewhere else or anything, but like, I look at that as an example of enough lighting where people could play till 11 o'clock at night or so? Is there any, because that's where I look at, that's where it takes another level in terms of, if we're really looking at the youth and looking at things to do, 6 o'clock, you're sending them off to, they're gonna hang out in front of a liquor store. I think those are types of things. What are we gonna do from 6 to 11? We're the most, the biggest opportunity for youth to, that we did a good job of keeping them occupied during the day.
You're gonna have to fight off a lot of people on night life.
Well, I'm just wondering if there was any discussion about,
No,
from after
Not a-
hours,
yeah.
No,
but there could be, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a bigger project, obviously, because that's CEQA and
Yeah.
neighbors complain, but, we can, I think you're right in your first point of let's improve the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah,
get that
absolutely.
done, and, yeah, go forward.
There's no restroom at that park either, is there?
Yeah, no.
No.
Well, when we were pushing the reorg, people said, what kind of sense does it make for one agency to do sewer and parks and rec? Well, it actually makes a lot of sense, because parks tend to need restrooms.
And we could give ourselves permits.
All right, number 10.
Number 10. Install more benches and picnic tables at key locations in communities and medians. I think that, that's broken out as a separate, point. But yeah, I think that was, for picnicking and basic.
And I think that's
Relaxation.
had broad support in the past from the
Yeah.
board, so it's not a big ticket item, so yeah. I think
Probably
that's a-
roll in with other median improvements.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
One of the bullet points here says that the benches and picnic tables are present in some places, but in derelict condition, they need to be replaced. To the extent possible, and yeah, some of it is corroded out to the point where it's useless, but some of those have historic significance. The one up a couple blocks on Balboa, which I guess is at about median 6, I think, probably.
6 and 7.
It's actually made from pieces of Ocean Shore Railroad, I think, the steel railroad tracks. At least one of those benches is made with railroad tracks. And so any of those that can somehow practically be rejuvenated and preserve that little bit of history, I think we should attempt that wherever possible. And one of those things, it's 100 years old, I bet, and you still can't even move it. I don't know, whoever put that in made it to stay.
All right, number 11.
Plan and develop a small disc golf course. That is, there's public support for that, and there's, and that I believe has been expressed over several years at county park meetings. And there is, that's another thing that could be, done in various ways, but it does have a low, it has a, it blends in well with the landscape and can have minimal disturbance on the environment when built. And it's definitely an activity that's benefits a wide range of age group, you know. So it's it would be a lot of fun. So anyway, any questions about that?
I think this board's gonna require a lot more, information on that, because my understanding is the amount of land involved is typically huge, and, when you have disc golf going on there, it's not even safe for people walking through there. So it basically becomes an exclusive use.
I guess the question would be, would one of the mediums be enough space to safely do that?
Well, I think there's ways to be flexible about size and, you know, scope.
But to Leonard's point, it probably couldn't be incorporated into 11 or 8. That would be something that would need its own kind of dedicated space if you did that.
Or west or east, or west.
Yes, yes.
Cause
Yeah,
like I
maybe
said,
that's
I don't know.
county-owned land or something.
it requires a lot of land, and so the only places that
What's that?
seem viable right now is one side
Yeah.
or Rochester.
Yeah, I mean, it does say on the list about small small discourse,
Yeah,
you know, in an environmentally suitable location.
I think we need to hear what small means.
Yeah, and again, I don't wanna dig us down into the weeds here. We're trying from a broad perspective to look at this stuff, like the pump track. We don't know what size that's gonna be, but, you know, we want the county to investigate what size they're looking at, where that could fit. And this is a process that keeps on going. We're not gonna decide everything tonight. You're gonna say, okay, I think these are good priorities. Let's have staff and the county staff investigate them further and see what comes out of that. And so number 12,
And that is to complete an inventory of district lands for recreational potential.
It was my understanding, I guess from our previous board meeting, that the committee was also being charged with evaluating other property for potential acquisition, and I
yeah, he
still
lists
don't.
that here, I thought.
Well, but in the title of 12, that's not apparent from the title.
Yeah, the second bullet point, he talks about it.
It could say lands within district
Yeah.
jurisdiction.
Yeah. So we could amend it if you wanna include that as part of the bullet item too.
Point being that
All right.
the committee felt it was important to inventory.
Right,
land.
so we'll just amend the bullet point to say complete an inventory of district lands and, beyond district lands as potential.
Yeah, like I think one of big interest is the, on the map there, it's in the blue outline. And I believe it is owned by the school district. So,
Right.
Yeah, so we could look
yeah,
at
that's
that.
definitely one that's,
Okay.
Now, there's
interest.
also another school district property, unfortunately, I don't know exactly where it is, it might be that one right there, or it might be out
That's
here.
where the square is missing, apparently.
So it's over
Yes,
here?
mhm.
And that one's either 6 acres or 10 acres, depending on who you listen to.
The committee is actually gonna be meeting to discuss inventory. They started it at the last committee meeting, and they will be making some recommendations to the board, I believe, at the March, board meeting.
All right.
great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Paul.
moving forward,
I do have one question, are these, what order are these 12 items listed in?
priority.
Well, number 12 belongs at number 1 or 2.
It's your board's decision.
I'm gonna start there.
I'd also, I have an arrow thing that, you know, 12 should be done certainly at least in initial parallel. Because
Okay.
we need the inventory to do the overall plan,
Yeah, so-
as quick as we can get that.
Okay.
So I think that number
So you
12
wanna slide
definitely
12
needs to move
to-
to number 2.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think there's priority, and then there's the project management approach as far as the short, mid, and long term, and that's where, yeah, absolutely, we need to be, look at the inventory and potential recreation uses, and that needs to be the starting point towards driving some of the other, the next one, same thing as far as, I think, number 8, hold a community event. The sooner we do that, and the sooner we plan for that, whether we plan 6 months from now and give enough time for people to come out, the better. The more we delay doing something like that, I think we're just gonna lose out on, so
Yeah.
I think
And
it's
that's
kind
gonna
of
be
some of those
driven-
things.
That's gonna be driven a little bit by the plans, 'cause
Yeah.
we've gotta have the plan in
Absolutely,
place
we have to have something to bring
So,
up.
and I was gonna
Yeah.
ask, Sam, if you could come up to the microphone. You guys have done a good job of listing 12 priorities here. Can we focus on 12?
I just wanted to caveat that in the next year, the property that's been acquired around Quarry Park, so that's Marauda Surf West, East, and the Wicklow property, we're going to be developing a master plan for that property it's all gonna be called Quarry Park. And that'll probably be about a 2-year process, one actually doing a master plan, and the second doing the environmental review on that. So ideas like something like a disc golf could be incorporated into a planning process like that.
How big is Wicklow? How big is Wicklow?
Wicklow's almost 400 or 500 acres.
Yeah, so you're
Close to
talking
500.
about an over 500 acre plan.
Yeah,
Now, before everybody laughs too hard at that, in Burnham's original plan, where El Granada Boulevard is now, that wasn't supposed to be residential. The residential was extended up when El Granada Boulevard was somehow pasted into Burnham's plan. But he actually had a 640 acre park that in the original drawing is referred to as Pleasure Park. But 640 acres, so with Wicklow, you've got most of his 640 acre park there.
Sam, is there a way to make sure that our, perhaps representatives from our Parks Advisory Committee could formally consult on the planning process for that area?
yeah, if we proceed with next steps, there'll be public input. And the Park Advisory Committee obviously will be very important in helping us discuss and also plan for the public notification.
All right, good. So does your board want to move any other priorities? Or do you want to move to accept the priorities with the
Well,
change that
I'd like
Leonard
to-
made?
I'd like to comment that moving up number 12 is very important, and I think we heard we'll change it to district lands or lands within the district jurisdiction, and that pushes me to say we have to get moving on adopting an actual policy for land acquisition. So let's
Okay.
agendize that.
And then I'd also say just an assessment of the, what really needs to be done in terms of the Clipper Ridge basketball court, just because that's something existing
We
that
had-
that I think,
So that'll be part
to
of,
figure out, is it really low
that'll be
hanging
part of
fruit?
number 9.
Yeah, yeah.
And we also have 2 speaker slips on this
That's what I wanted to
item.
find out.
So
Well,
let's hear-
Let me make one more suggestion for moving priorities around. Because, when I'm sitting on the other side of the table, I always want to hear what the decision makers are thinking before I make my comments. So, I think that number 10, install more benches and picnic tables at key locations, needs to be moved much higher up, because that's a really easy, quick, and relatively low-cost thing to do. And, you talk about low-hanging fruit.
Which number is that?
Number 10, I think that needs to be moved much higher up, just because we can get it done so easily and quickly.
And would you like to move that to number 3?
Yeah, it ends up being, what's currently number 2 and what we're proposing moving end up being similar priority.
So 12 becomes 2, 10 becomes 3?
12 becomes 2.
Matthew?
Yes.
And I don't think that we need this rigid, we have to do number 1 before we do number 2, before we have to do number 3. I think if the goal, which has been stated here, is to get some big projects going like we have, for the trails like 1 and 2, those should start immediately, because those are gonna take long. While we're doing those, you know, at a meeting, we could say, hey, why don't we buy 2 picnic tables over here? So I wouldn't push any of those 1 or 2 down, because those are the time critical ones that are gonna take a long time. So I would say launch those, the planning process, the design process, get all that going. And if we can have a public meeting or put some picnic tables in, we can just get that done while we're launching. Otherwise, we don't wanna wait 6 months to a year to start the median strip. So
No,
I'd like to get that going.
Yeah, that's a good
We're
point.
both in IT, you can
Yeah.
say parallel process.
I was just
Yes,
gonna
okay.
say, this won't be a serial process, it'll be a parallel process, we're not gonna march through 1, 2, 3, 4, right?
Can somebody from County Parks go into Quarry Park with a chainsaw and cut wood and make benches and tables? The advantage of eucalyptus, if you can find enough that's straight, good luck with that. But if you can find enough that's straight, the advantage is it is so toxic, nothing will attack it. Right, Jim?
At Elkhorn Slough, I actually did see eucalyptus benches that were made, and they were promoting them as this is what you could do with eucalyptus. They were also incredibly heavy.
Yep.
It's a very heavy wood, so.
They won't walk off on their own.
Right, so it's a kind of wood that if you don't cut it quickly, it cures, and it gets very difficult to cut and to do things with.
Well, conversely, Director Warren, I like to hear from the public before we make the decisions, so.
Right, but I'm just saying preliminary comments, then the public, and then the
Okay.
decision.
The first speaker slip I have is from Matt Allen.
Oh, yeah, hello. That's me.
It's just for the,
Okay, I just want to avoid the hunchback routine.
You do have to be within about a foot of it, though.
You're fine, you're fine.
Okay, so I'm new to these meetings. I've showed up for the last 2, but I'm just urging you guys to look at this as a process that has been going on for an entire year, and that the information that's being presented to you reflects what the community has voiced a need and a desire for. And I hear some talk among some of the board members of wanting more details, but my understanding is that the community would like these things to begin, and if you guys can greenlight some or all of the list that we brought to you, then it starts the process of acquiring the details that may be required to actually complete the projects. But I'm urging you guys to move forward with as many of the things on the list as possible. As public servants, the community has spoken, and what personal biases or a need for overly technical information before we get started, I think is slowing down the process. And I like what you guys are talking about with the parallel process, not necessarily deciding tonight what's going to be the order of things, but just saying these are the things that we want to happen, and beginning. There's a ton of community support for many of the projects, and like we identified the pump track. I think I was present when the presentation was presented, and the person who is the spokesperson for this project claimed to have enough community support that it would be all volunteer, all donated. So let's move forward.
And just so you understand, that is the exact purpose of this item, for the board to put their blessings on these priorities, and then the details get worked out at the staff level, so it's exactly
Right.
what you're looking for is the purpose of this item.
Yeah, there's
So,
without pointing fingers, there seems to be a presence on the board that is requiring or requesting details before decisions are made. Where I think we need green lights
yeah, and that's,
to do what you
that's
just
what
said.
we're looking for, yeah.
All right, well, as a member of the community, you have my money at your disposal. Please use it wisely and in accordance with the requests that you've heard from the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dan Haggerty.
California state
Hi,
flag.
Dan Haggerty, El Granada. Thank you for the presentation. I wish I was paying a little more attention to this. Totally brought me up to speed. I did hear about the pump track, and you know, it's pretty exciting. But before I want to talk to that, you know, we mentioned that, well, now each median needs to be ADA compliant. You know, I'd just really like to make the statement to caution here. You know, it's not the ADA compliance part, it's how it looks afterwards. I'd like to invite anybody to go up to Cabrillo Avenue. And you can see, you know, is that gonna be the model? Frankly, to me, it looks stupid and cheap. It's not in, it doesn't honor Daniel Burnham's design. It doesn't honor the rural, you know, the natural look that our community loves and you know, is prevalent. So you know, it's sad that it looks the way it does because there's so many different options to become ADA compliant. So I think that it's very important before we, you know, this is all on an early stage. If you know, you look, yes, some of this is just generic, how it's done at sidewalks, these yellow bumpy pads, but some of them are, there's communities that are really trying hard to make it look better. Anyway, I've said enough, but I do believe that before anything moves forward, any model is picked, I do believe that there should be some input from the community. There should be some discussions on different options. Because, you know, I've said enough. I also want to, yeah, as far as the bike pump, the pump track, you know, I want to say that, you know, when I was a kid, I grew up in San Francisco and right next to Golden Gate Park. So we had all of that. We made it ourselves. You know, kids would start to meet each other, and before you know it, there's groups of, we actually formed a racing club, a racing team. One of our bike shops sponsored it. But, you know, I think it was a really good direction to consider. And I really do believe the area over there in the blue outline, next to Clipper Ridge, you know, would be a great location. You know, the different the grades, you know. Heck, there's already been, you know, it's been shaped before. Kids use it for you know, for decades. Unfortunately, some of it was destroyed at some time, and nobody knows who. But anyway, that's, you know, I think that that's something that should be looked at, should be prioritized. It would be a great, you know, and then the whole blend, it could, you know, if you blend in with dog walkers, hikers, you know, it could be a multi, you know, use. And I have heard kids in the neighborhood that would be more than happy to volunteer their time. They're the experts. You know, they know how to shape jumps so that they have fun. What else here? So, yeah, I think it could be a you know, a multi, you know, just an excellent location. You know, yeah, great for the regional, you know, the area. And I think, you know, as kids grow up and use this, you're gonna find that you're gonna have, you know, older kids mentoring younger kids, and it's just gonna be it's a great opportunity. So that's it. Also, you know, I agree berm strip's important, but you know, please consider making you know, that property part of the parks, Granada Parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Discussion? Do we need a Oh, that's right, I got
There's a speaker
another
up here.
speaker slip at the last moment. Fran Pollard? Thanks, Jim.
Hi, Fran Pollard of Granada. I agree with what you just said about moving up number 12. I think that's really important. I'd like to see that we get started on the Burnham Strip. We've been working and planning and talking about that for years. So do you think like next month we could get all the topsoil in and get started? We've got to get something started there, and so it starts to look good and usable. And, you know, can put some picnic benches out there too. And that would be great for everybody, just to be able to go and enjoy and watch the sunset once in a while and just relax and keep it for a viewpoint. I agree too. The school property, I think that's something that should be moved up too, since it's already owned by the school district. We taxpayers have already paid for it, so they, just like the county, would offer the park, or their park to Granada. I would hope that you could work something out with the school district. I think we need to really lobby them to either in cooperation with us and get that property. After all, it's for the kids. So schools, parks, all goes together. And that would be a great parcel, and maybe, well, all of it, I guess. The blue part is school, and the upper corner too, I guess. So see if they're willing to work it out with us. And we don't have to pay a whole lot of money for it. It should be a token fee. And what I want to say about developing, yeah, let's get started on the number 8 and 11 to get something looking good, and the same thing can be done for the Burnham Strip. Oh, and of course, as I said the last time, we have to buy the Pink property to complete that whole southern end of the Burnham Strip, so that the district has that whole southern end. Because the Pink is next to the little nursery school, so that would be the final lot. And then we would have the whole southern end of the Burnham Strip, and let's get started in improving it as soon as possible. That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thanks, Fran.
Thanks.
Do we need a motion or a resolution or something?
Yeah, I think we should have a motion to approve this list as a priority list from the board with as amended, moving 12 to number 2, number 10 to number 3.
Before we go to a motion, one of my primary concerns with this priority list as presented, let's skip for a second the reordering that we've talked about, but the priority list as presented it basically represents the opinions of the committee members and the people that showed up to committee meetings. What the priority list needs to look like, and I didn't have time to go try and find this because I'm not sure it's ever even been distributed, but melding the county's 3 surveys, 1989, 1997, and whatever the one was in the 2000s, those 3 county surveys were quite consistent with each other, and the survey that this district did was pretty consistent with those, and I don't think that the priority list as presented here is consistent with those 4 surveys. The 3 county ones were typically titled Parks and Rec Needs Assessment. And in particular, my recollection from all 3 of the county surveys is the top 3 things on the list You didn't get to active rec until you got to number 4 on the list. The top 3 things on the list were for passive parks and trails and open space parks.
Sam?
Just to add, because I was involved in developing the recreational needs assessment done in 2002, which led to the fees being established in the Mid-Coast, which led to a priority plan being developed. That's the Mid-Coast Park and Rec Action Plan. That took 2 years to develop with the community input, and then we've been working on implementing that. We've finished 11 projects. All of these things that are in this, on your list are consistent with your survey, which are consistent with the action plan, which are consistent with the recreational needs assessment. So it's very consistent. The question is, do you want to do these projects? Are you willing to, if you touch a median, are you willing to assume maintenance of it? Those are some of the other questions you really need to consider.
And I look at going back to number 8, holding a community event in terms of, kind of like what Matt Allen said, there's nothing holding us back from putting together the details and moving forward with that. Doesn't mean we have to commit in that direction, but I think picking a deadline and holding ourselves accountable for getting different options ready. And, I think that, if nothing else, serves as a catalyst in terms of putting some of the details behind these projects, the reality of what some of them might cost, timeframes, putting all that together, and having some type of deadline, where that, needs to all come together and get presented, and then, more feedback in terms of, tying the community into it.
Can we say target date instead of deadline? This is
Target
nothing.
date.
Excuse me, Sam, will the action plan have dates, when you come back with it? Will it have like EPA estimate timeframes for us?
Schedules.
There's several items relating to the medians, for example, trees, trails, a landscape plan, plans for the community park, the benches. These things can be combined too, and we can address those as one kind of project in and of itself. So that'd be probably our approach, is doing that. We have a number of on-call contractors. The park committee had a presentation at one point by MIG TRA, for example, talking about some of the recreational opportunities and what a landscape plan might look like. That's one of our on-call contractors. We don't have to use them. We could use another one, but we have some very good contractors that are just recently confirmed by the Board of Supervisors. So, we can certainly move things along with your direction.
Can you get the logs put on the?
I'll get in eventually, don't worry. No, I just wanted to second Matthew's initial comments, thanking the committee for doing all this work. It's one thing for everybody just to sit around and say, yeah, we want parks, for decades, which is what's happened. We've gone out, and with other members of the community and some of you folks out there too, we got the parks powers, and now we've launched the committee. So now you folks are putting in real work for everybody, and we certainly appreciate that. I don't see any reason why, all 12 of these can't be accomplished. It's just a matter of sequencing, working with the county, finding the best location for each one of these projects. They shouldn't all go into the Burnham Strip, for instance. There's vistas, and then there's more isolated areas, and there's good trail areas. So I personally think these can all be done, and I would be ready to make a motion at some point to just approve this list as amended and
So
move this thing
approve the-
forward.
So approve the list.
Well,
Let me read
he
the
said he'd be
motion.
willing to make the motion. He didn't make the motion. We still.
Well, I don't want to cut off. Well, no,
We
I can
still-
make the motion, then you can keep talking.
We
So
still
I
have more
move to
discussion.
accept the 12 priorities as worked out by the committee and, as amended and slightly resequenced during the conversation.
And I'll second that.
And let me read that amendment so we've got it in everything.
Okay.
So we're moving priority 12 to priority number 2, moving priority 10 to priority number 3, and we're changing the title of that bullet point, complete an inventory of district lands and lands within the district boundaries for recreation potential.
Sounds good to me.
I thought we had at least some discussion of moving up number 8, to hold a community event and information session.
Well, I wanna echo what I think Rick said.
I would just move it in
Moving
parallel somewhere.
So, you know, as items come up that we have enough information to hold a community meeting, we will be holding community meetings
So,
for all of them.
actually, number 8 doesn't really have to be an item on this list because it's just gonna keep happening on an as appropriate basis.
It doesn't hurt having it on the list. Right? It
Okay.
shows that we're doing public outreach, if nothing else.
Now, one of the things, and I actually don't know whether this showed up on the various needs assessments at all, but over here, a couple of years ago, somebody in the community, I have no idea who, doesn't matter anyway, threw a couple ropes over a tree branch. The tree branch is probably about 30 feet up. These are long ropes. And they put a swing bench on the 2 ropes. And that gets really heavy use. There's frequently parents bringing gangs of kids over there to play on the swing. And so I think there's really a very significant demand for swing sets scattered around. And that just, you know, that's my gut feel from observing
good
this out a window from my house. I have a direct view of it. And so I don't see that in here. Can we check the district's community survey and see where swing sets showed up in there?
I think that probably was
Yeah.
addressed under the rubric of children's parks. And there are several other locations in the district where that's happened, and they do get continual use. And when the kids get a little older, younger kids come and put that thing back up. So I think it speaks to the desperation
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
parks and rec opportunities here, so.
I mean, the fact that they've happened in so many places just with people putting up some ad hoc thing, to me, that really speaks to the need and desire for it. And now, of course, you know, I think I was a kid once, and my recollection is some of these ad hoc things were actually more fun than the formally constructed.
That's right.
And I remember riding my bicycle in an open field that had terrain like this, so, yeah. But, you know, we might want to think about it, the ad hoc swing I'm talking about, the seat keeps falling down, and it requires maintenance that the community members are pretty much unable to do.
Well, yeah, and I want to, again, reemphasize that these are kind of broad guiding principles. We're not going to be able to go into, you know, so we can look at that as part of this neighborhood park, and we can look at this kind of stuff. I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Now, one thing, I don't know where it fits in to the big picture that we're talking about, but the district owns a property, let's see if I can even find
The
it.
green ones are marked, are different.
There. It's landlocked, but conveniently enough, this little strip here along Capistrano Road is owned by the county. I bet we could get an easement over that. So the question is, what would be acceptable to the community to put over there? You know, the downside is that it's really isolated, and then there's the potential of bad things happening there.
And it's across the highway.
Yeah, but, you know, I would like the committee to think about this at least a little bit in terms of what kind of use can we make of that would be safe for the people using it. And, you know, because it's out there where any use there is not going to disturb neighbors, you know, there might be something that could go there that'd be hard to place elsewhere. But, you know, keeping in mind the safety issues because it's so isolated. And that parcel is about 3,500 square feet by my guess.
All right, we've got
All
a
right.
motion on the floor.
Yes, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I believe that was unanimous. All right.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate the committee as well.
Can the committee members here raise their hands? So we have 3, 4.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for all your work, effort, and expect to keep at it, okay? All right, item number 2, consider a revision to bylaws changing the day and/or time of regular board meetings.
Oh, I forgot to bring my laptop for this one.
I don't remember who proposed this thing, but,
Well, I didn't propose it, I suggested the agenda item because I had been asked by a community member to consider it. So it's on the agenda to consider it, I'm not pushing any change.
well, Rick was waving his hand like he,
I'm pushing a change.
all right.
I'm pushing a change to move it up to 7 o'clock like the SAM meetings, because that gets everybody in the community and us and staff and visitors an extra half an hour to get home.
Same day,
Better.
earlier time.
Same, third Thursday's fine, I would just say let's move it up to 7.
That's a good idea.
Well, staff always favors earlier meetings. I'm totally opposed to changing. I'm totally opposed to changing the meeting time, because if you think about people who work over the hill and have families, they have to get back here, they're probably not back here until 6 or later. And then if they wanna have dinner and interact with the kids before they go to a meeting, they're not gonna be able to do it for a 7 o'clock meeting. And, I will also point out that, the community friendliness of the various coastside agency boards is inversely related on a direct line to how early the meetings start. The most public unfriendly boards, the fire district and the harbor district, start their meetings at 6 and 6:30. And the more public unfriendly those two boards get, the earlier they keep moving their meetings to.
So it's 7, not 6.
Well, you also have to think about how we're gonna handle closed session.
Yep.
We put the closed session at the beginning, an hour before the regular start time, because one director at the time, basically stops thinking at 9 o'clock and essentially said that.
Well, the real
And Chuck
question-
knows who I'm talking about.
The real question is, if we did what Rick is suggesting, can all of you make closed session at 6 o'clock?
It'd be tough.
No, that's.
I'm coming from Walnut Creek a lot, and,
Walnut Creek?
yeah.
Where the hell's that?
Yeah, and, with traffic and things like that, even leaving early, I would, I'm already having a difficult time, and then you look at accidents, something like that, I'd be cutting it close. I could move any day, just earlier would be difficult.
Well, all right, let's bifurcate this into, are we gonna change the meeting day and are we gonna change the meeting time? So separate discussions on those two.
I would not change the day.
I'm not in favor of changing the day either.
Okay. I did do sort of a scan, I can't remember if I emailed you this or not. The Midcoast Community Council has on their website, the Coastside Government Meeting Calendar, which is essentially the logical follow-on to one that I used to maintain on the sanmateo.org website. And there's not a lot of differences between the current government meeting calendar and way back when I was maintaining it. So Wednesdays are totally conflicted out between Midcoast Council and Harbor District. Tuesdays.
Is anybody in favor of changing the date? I don't think that's even
Okay.
a discussion. We don't need to talk about it because no one wants to change the date.
Okay,
So.
Good.
Let's just go.
on the time, it doesn't make really that much difference to me, 7 or 7:30. I'm fortunate enough to work from home, and maybe I won't have to work too much longer.
Well, I work
But-
from home and I still have a hard time getting here on time.
That could be any time.
Well, yeah. But I think it is good to have a time to have a closed session prior to the regular meeting, because that's often the time we need to discuss things that are on the regular agenda.
And by the way, when Sam moved the meetings from 7:30 to 7 o'clock, the assumption was that the closed session would be in that time slot, and the regular meeting, the open session, would typically start at the old 7:30 start time.
Well, maybe we could consider still doing closed session at 6:30 when possible, and only addressing things that need to be for that night's agenda, and then if there are other things that closed session is required for, we could do that afterwards. So we can just have really long meetings.
So,
Well, yeah.
so you're saying that the 6:30 closed session would address only items that are on that night's open session agenda?
Yes.
And we can also, you know, if we change the meeting time to 7 o'clock, we can also schedule the closed session, you know, email all 5 of you and say, hey, guys, we need a closed session, can you make it at 6? And if we have issues, we can do it afterwards. I don't think it should happen that often. So, you know, sounds like, David, you're the one most constrained if you're traveling.
Well, you know, there's a Mid-Coast Council member who works out, and I don't even know where it is, and she basically can't even make it to the 7:30 Mid-Coast Council meeting. She's always 15 or 20 minutes late because of how long her commute is, and then, you know, if there's any problem on the roads, then you're sunk.
Well, that's the case on a daily basis for
Right, but if you-
everyone and everything.
But if you're just barely making it on time when traffic is typical, you know, typically bad, but typical, then you basically miss half the meeting if there's a major snarl.
There was a day last week when there were 3 accidents on 92. I don't think we can schedule things to take care of such
Right,
occurrences.
but if you're not scheduling it to, you know, the minute when directors can make it, so that they have some free play in the time, then if there's a problem, there's still some reasonable chance that they can make it on time.
Yeah, so you know, your board can keep it at 7:30, or remember, if we change it to 7 o'clock, it's not forever. We could change it to 7 o'clock, see how it works. If it doesn't work, 3 or 4 or 6 months, change it back to 7:30.
You know, it has been 7:30 for longer than I've been on the board. Although, if you read the minutes from before I got on the board, you would swear that the ordinance start time was 7:37. That's when all the meetings started for some reason.
Probably because you were late.
No, I said before I was on the board.
Well, I would like to ask staff, the council and GM, if they have any input here. Are any of these possible changes a hardship?
Have you ever seen?
You come from a long way.
Here at the end of the meetings?
Yeah.
Well, it's, you know, from a staff level, we don't get a vote, obviously, but Jonathan's gotten an hour-long drive. These are long days for everybody. Most of the time, I'm up early traveling up here, and we start pushing 10 and 10:30. It's a long day, but, you know, so I would prefer earlier, but you don't, you know. You have anything to add to that? It's just.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a strong feeling about it, to be honest. You know, it's been fine for me the way it's been. Chuck's got a good point too.
I would remind the board that we're here doing the public's business, not our business, and we need to accommodate public. And, you know, as I said, and you know, with Parks and Rec, a more important part of our constituency is now typically parents, and, you know, they need to deal with the kids when they get home from work. And I don't see how they're gonna do that and come to a 7 o'clock
They
meeting.
also have to get the kids to bed at night, and there's tons of reasons why. So, I mean, why don't we just vote?
We have one, don't move it, we have one definite move it. I've said it doesn't make much difference to me, so.
I'm saying don't move it, just, until, maybe we'll think about it as things progress. If we start extending meetings longer because of Parks and Recs, maybe that's a time where we bring it back. I know we mentioned maybe we might even need 2 meetings a month because the workload could increase temporarily. So I think once those types of things start showing the need, that's when my recommendation, we revisit maybe, if we're constantly going in late into the night, moving it up at that point. But I think doing it now, it would be slightly inconvenient, on both making sure everyone's on time and just traffic issues, everything else.
And maybe the answer is if we keep it at 7:30, we all keep an eye on, let's keep the meeting moving along.
Director Blanchard, would you like to weigh in?
I'm flexible.
And Switzerland, man.
All right, it doesn't sound to me like there's any sort of consensus to move the meeting, so.
The only question is, are there 3 votes?
True.
You can find out just by voting quickly. We don't have to discuss this. You can vote and we can move on.
All right, did you actually make a motion?
I move that we change the meeting time till 7 o'clock.
Do we have a second?
If we don't have a second, then it makes it really fast.
Now,
All right.
By the way, if we do end up going to 2 meetings a month, at least on an intermittent basis, we should try really hard to have one of them be sewer stuff only and one of them be Parks and Rec stuff only.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think the audience would agree.
Well,
All right, so there's no second, so
we don't have a second?
motion dies for lack of a second.
Okay. Sorry, Rick. Item number 3, consideration of independent contractor agreement for Whitworth Park and LLP as District General Counsel.
Can I ask my standard question? Is there anything that's changed in here other than dates and hourly rates?
Yes.
Please cover.
I'm not sure I could. I don't think there's anything substantive, I guess is what I would say. I think I found a typo here or there. So I think that's.
This is our standard agreement, like
Standard
Donovan
agreement.
says, and he just amended his rates for a slight increase over the next 3 years.
Do we still get a better rate than most government agencies?
Yes, you do.
Yes.
Okay, so, given the statements that were just made, that there's no substantive changes here, and the only things that are changed are the dates and the hourly rates, and the hourly rate increase is really minimal, like $5 an hour.
Yeah.
I move approval, what's the agenda item wording?
Consideration of independent contractor agreement.
I move approval of the independent contractor agreement for Whitworth Park and LLP as District General Counsel.
I'll second that.
Okay, I'm assuming that this is the most carefully written contract that's ever done. So, I'm gonna call a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Actually, in all seriousness, because it's council's contract, the general manager should have reviewed it very carefully. Okay.
I know how crafty this guy is.
All right, item number 4, consideration of report by District Sewer Authority Mid-Coast-Side representatives. Who wants to talk about SAM?
I can start it real quick. There were basically 2 meetings. One was the, if you want to keep this in sequence, the SAM meeting of January 25th was the first meeting. A lot of stuff is happening at SAM. I think the important things, I'll talk about recycled water when we talk about recycled water. One of the major projects we've been doing that's ongoing is working on the intertie pipeline. That's the main pipe that brings everything from Montera and picks up everything in Granada and takes it down to the SAM plant. That's being upgraded, reinforced, bad sections being taken out. Transfer valves being put in. It's a multi-million-dollar project, and that's still moving on, so that's the good thing. Another big project we launched is because of some staffing issues. We have what's called the Non-Domestic Waste Source Control Program. This is, since it's non-domestic, that means all the businesses in our district. They have to be checked periodically, they have to have their rates checked, they pay a whole different rate than a residence does. We have grease traps. We are required by law to inspect them. So this time around, because we're restructuring all of our personnel at SAM, we farmed this out to one of the other sanitary districts, and they've been running through and hitting all of these things for us just to accelerate the process and touch everybody eventually in our plan. So that's going to be going on. We've hired, I guess it's official, we've hired the legal company. I think that's been approved.
The agenda item here, we did approve.
We approved that.
The contract.
So we have Jim, our former attorney after many, many decades, retired at the end of the year, so we have a new legal firm.
And we will see the new guy in 4 days. SAM meeting.
And will that be one of these partners, Bold, Polishner, Maddow, Nielsen, or Judson?
I actually don't remember.
And where are they located?
I think somewhere in the Bay Area.
I hope.
Well,
It might be Walnut Creek, if I'm not mistaken.
They have various offices around, and one of them is like pretty close to us.
One of the guys who really, really wanted the job is in Southern California.
Some other, smaller issues, we're changing out the accounting software to make it easier to do more of the accounting, if not all of the accounting processes totally in-house. So that's going to be a savings over time, and we've had so many issues with accounting and crazy spreadsheets that I think that's going to be a major step forward for SAM.
And once upon a time, SAM did do it all in-house, but that person left the agency, and so at that time, we farmed out some of the accounting. But the new person started, a couple weeks ago, give or take?
I think she just came on board, so it's...
So sometime this month, the new person started, and that's why the new manager thinks that we can bring stuff in-house with some new software.
There were several other things, like we're looking at unrepresented employee manuals and a few other things, but those are, I think, minor compared to the big ones.
Well, to summarize a bunch of these agenda items all at once, there's a lot of stuff that wasn't written down properly or at all, and the new manager is not wasting any time formalizing stuff that should have been done decades ago.
Just one little thing on SAM from a Granada cost standpoint. Once the measuring meters that checked our flow, which is what we pay SAM, were corrected, we've been maintaining slightly lower than our historical averages. So we're in the process of saving money, actually. So we're doing very well. Some of it shifted more toward Half Moon Bay. So, but instead of us at like the 30, or during the bad meter time, 32, 33%, we're down to 27%. So that reduces the cost for all the Granada people here.
But I think we'll see it seasonally fluctuate between 27% and 31 or 32, which is why I keep asking for and never get from the SAM staff an overlay graph showing on a full page width of 1 year, 12 months on a page width, and different colored lines for each year going back, say, 5 years, so then we can see if the trending up or down is tracking previous years as it trends up and down. Because then some of these disagreements would potentially be mooted if you see that there's this long-term trend of it ebbing and flowing over the different seasons.
Sure, and the other meeting was last Monday, which was the Recycled Water Committee. That's still moving along. The 2 or 3 items that are moving again in parallel. We're going out for, or have gone out for quotes. They should probably be in hand, probably right now, certainly before the next SAM meeting next Monday, to bid up to what we call the 25% drawings for the recycled water plant. When you do the 25% detail, that's enough to go to environmental agencies for approval, all the CEQA stuff that has to occur. You can go out for grants, you can go out for funding. All that requires that certain level of detail. So Sam is committed to take that big first step to get us up to the drawing, so pretty much everything else can proceed from there. So that's like the big step.
Has the engineer been selected for that?
No, it was, the 2 bids went out, and we'll know at the meeting.
So do the 2 boards have to
No.
accept a bid?
Sam. It's only Sam. That's
Okay.
our part. So CCWD doesn't have to vote. They're doing their own engineering studies for other things. The other big item that's been occurring is we saw salt or just sodium infiltration into the water that was higher than acceptable for using the water for golf courses or pretty much any use. So we did a huge amount of sampling around the whole SAM area, and then identified some areas, and then went back with a second round of automated measuring equipment to nail down as close as we could the densities, the time of the day, the concentrations, the bad areas, and all that is being focused. So we're going to be studying either, is it saltwater infiltration? We know some of it is coming from the rocket nurseries, but not as much as we thought. We think a lot of it could be coming from Montera, from water softeners.
Montera or Granada?
I thought it was Montera that had the issues.
Well, there's at least 700 wells here, 400 in Montera.
No. Well, that could be another factor.
I kind of thought they said that all of the inputs to the Portola pump station had high sodium levels.
I didn't want to do all the details here, but we are looking at that as a major issue and how to solve the major issue and treat it here. We could do little sub-treatments at the nurseries or at the pump station, or the golf course can do a little treatment when it gets to the golf course. There's lots of options, but our task was to find where the problem was, at least the scope of the problem. And we spent a good amount of change to do that, so. The next step that's occurring. What?
Do you know what the salt level was? by any chance?
I can get you copies of the reports.
I can email.
I mean, it's down to the hour.
Yeah, all right, I'll
by
email
all
Beverly.
things. It's an amazing study Kishan did for us over there. There's another step which is going on in parallel is starting the process for the contracts. Sam will need to have a contract with CCWD and CCWD with any of the users, especially initially the golf course. We've been developing bullet points before we handed it over to the attorneys to write up large documents. We've sort of been going through other documents that Chuck's provided and other people to say, here's the stuff we want in the contract, and we're at that level now. And the 2 staffs, Sam and CCWD, are now working to refine all those bullets, which will then be turned over, now that we have a legal firm, to the lawyers to write up the formal contracts. That's slightly being stalled until we do this 25% study, which will give us
25% design.
25% drawings.
Yeah, you said study.
Oh, that whole package will give us our best estimate, which will be pretty close to what the water's going to cost us, and therefore what we will be charging CCWD, and if that's still acceptable. We feel it is to the golf course. It said, here's my maximum price. We think we can meet that those studies will prove that, and then those numbers will go into these contracts, and then we can move the project forward. So I think it's still moving along.
So what happened to the idea of taking one of the contracts for one of Chuck's places and changing the names of
They
the
have all those
agencies?
copies.
Because each individual.
Well, and sure, it has to be
Days.
customized, but I think it was a good base to start with.
It gives you a good idea, but again, my recycled water agreement for my Santa Fe Valley plant is completely different because it was funded by Mellow Response, so I don't have to recoup that cost. Whereas I'm doing a recycled water agreement now where we're doing a break even, where it says, we're gonna build all this stuff, we're gonna finance it, you're gonna pay our financing costs each year, and we're gonna break even, and you'll have to pay that. So there's so many different ways to do it, it just varies.
Is that how the cost is?
What?
Is that how the cost is visualized to be covered? Will both districts, will there be two step-ups by the time it gets to the client? Or,
We are covering costs, period, but we
Same.
are covering all our costs.
right,
Which is all this preliminary work we've been doing, and even some of the engineering work that was done before. So our goal is to cover all, CCWD will pay us, so SAM and all of the SAM users have no repercussions from the recycled water project. The contract that they sign with the golf course is their business. We would obviously encourage, and they have their own administrative costs and stuff like that too. We are assuming that they aren't in this to make billions of dollars and stuff like that, or it's just not gonna.
Check with Bruce on his opinion on
So,
that, he might disagree with.
Those two will be able to say whether their number is good enough. If we
So-
assume that we can do it for a cost, that CCWD will have to mark up some.
Now, there's a provision in one of the contracts that Chuck provided years ago that I think that you guys should give serious consideration to. And that is if CCWD raises the price to their customers for recycled water, that any increase over what we're charging them, we being SAM, basically, and I don't remember exactly how it's worded, Chuck might be able to help me out here, but essentially that SAM gets half of what in industry would be called profit. So if CCWD raises their prices more than their cost, half of that comes back to SAM.
They're theoretically constrained by what's called a cost of service study, so they're not allowed by government law to charge
They
more
being,
CCWD or any government agency, but,
okay,
so, for instance, we have the same system where there's a plant on the water down south. They sell their water to the water district, and the water district marks it up, but it's a nominal amount, it's like $40 an acre foot, so it's $12,000 a year, it's not worth.
so why is
talking
that
about.
provision that I'm talking about in one of your contracts?
Why isn't it?
Why is it? Trust me, I read those contracts.
Because they're
when you
different,
apply.
that's why I say, each contract's different. The closest model to yours is the model I'm describing,
Okay.
where Santa Levis JPA sells it to Santa Fe Irrigation District.
so Rick, planning, financing, installation, all that stuff, so at some point, those upfront costs will be paid off? And,
Yes.
and the price will then drop?
Yeah.
Price
There's an
drops,
answer.
It will go into maintenance mode. I mean,
Uh-huh.
there will be maintenance charges. There are several options available. One is to go in with the minimal plant, minimal size that meets golf course kind of requirements to get it going. The facilities are modular, so we can add more and more refinements to reverse osmosis and several other things, up to and including turning it into drinking water. So all those are possible. Some felt that instead of trying to plan for the maximum capability initially, it would be easier to get grants to get the project moving, and then we can just add stuff on as we go, so. If, once we're past, all the expenses and it's just maintenance, then it seems to me that the price could come down.
But
Also, if we spread it across more users, the price would drop to the golf course and the customers.
But the expenses are gonna be amortized over a
Right.
substantial number of years, and so at the end of the amortization period, it's likely that instead of lowering the rates, we'll have to use that money to refresh the physical plant.
So, our goal is to make it feasible to get the thing launched with the assumption that that's the hard part. And then the other, things can be handled once we get going, so.
So I have two other Sam points if Rick is finished on
Yep.
that. We have a budget workshop scheduled for March 7th. And I will do everything I can to make sure that's televised. I've made a big issue of that in past years, that it wasn't televised. And as far as I'm concerned, it is the most important SAM meeting of the year, is the budget workshop. That's when the public sees how we're spending their money. The other comment, if I can remember what it was. Oh, yeah. Rick, I hope that your recollection of this matches mine, that in the budget year that we're currently in, we agreed to add funding for an operator position, but we did not authorize actually doing the hire. That still had to come back to the board.
I saw that discussion.
And Beverly, when the SAM board approved Rob's restructuring, where we didn't replace the technical services supervisor and we hired the engineering and contracts manager instead, and promoted two of the operators into theoretically rotating assignment of being the supervisor, Rob assured the board that there would not be a headcount increase. In other words, we would not hire another operator to backfill that, and that's the only reason the board approved it. But now Beverly is looking and saying, well, it's in the budget, I'm gonna go out and hire into that position.
And she was stopped, and I'm waiting to her presentation at the meeting.
Well, I suggested to her that she needs to bring it back to the board, but I haven't heard any confirmation
I
from her.
think she said just coming to the board, so.
Okay, I somehow missed that then. Okay.
That's a big board decision.
I would also like to see if Chuck wants to comment at all on the maintenance system contract situation, since I heard that. Collection system.
Yeah.
Since I heard the two other agencies have given notice.
They haven't given notice, but they're rattling their sabers that they potentially may give notice because they're unhappy with the collections crew. Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I discussed with Beverly.
Which we are also, as I pointed out today, I just said we're just not rattling the sabers this time.
Well, I discussed this a couple of years ago with Chuck, and I've discussed it very recently with Beverly. One of the things that I'm having a really hard time understanding is the collection system maintenance crew is two-man field crews on the trucks, a full-time mechanic, and a .48 FTE supervisor. Let's just call it .5. So that's 5.5 FTE. So if the collection systems contracts are terminated, Beverly's preparing 3 layoff notices, and I can't get the math to work. How, if we eliminate a department that's 5.5 FTE, we only lay off 3 FTE. And she's given me explanations that just whiz over my head. They make no sense to me at all. Maybe I need to remind her I was a math major.
We'll deal with that at the meeting.
I was going to ask a question, but I think Chuck just answered it, which was, are we sure we're actually getting good television and timely television information on our lines and on the cleanouts? Because I keep looking at these repairs that we do, our district does, and they're all like on the same blocks.
Because the county
Over and
doesn't
over again.
maintain that street, and the routes have taken over, because the county will not maintain Alameda.
Isn't taking out routes what they're supposed to be doing, the SAM?
All right, let me put it this way. Frenchman's Creek, where the city maintains the streets very well, Clipper Ridge, where the streets are maintained very well, have none of these problems. The problems are all in the portion of our district where the county doesn't maintain the streets properly.
They're also about 70 years younger than this area for residents.
Yeah, we have this discussion about the collections group continually, and it's one of the more frustrating conversations. It's the same something I have with Sam, because I keep saying, we have the exact same system down south, and we have none of these issues. And I've gone out with their cleaning group and seen what equipment they're using, and supposedly that new truck, they've only got one guy who can drive.
Oh, they'd have somebody?
I think John Zell.
That's one more than the last time I asked.
But, Like, I could go on for an hour on that. It's one of the more frustrating things.
How does that affect your bet?
I don't want to put you on the spot, but is it possible that you're considering proposing that we drop out of this maintenance
Well,
agreement?
those two we're leaving, because we have to, or else we're gonna be picking up $900,000 worth of collections costs by ourselves, so.
Yeah.
The conversations we keep having, if you two go, we by definition have to go, or pick up a lot of money. So
Well, and-
what would happen is we'd reform a joint troika up here and, clean it together. So, and I've had discussions with half of Bay more so than Montera on how that would work. Either we bring it into Montera and they sub out to us, or we bring it in here and sub out to
Well,
them.
Montera has a field crew to maintain their water system, and maintaining water and sewer, there's a lot in common in the skill set. And so Clemens was gonna be training their field crew. This came up, I went to their board meeting, I don't know, sometime in the last year on this topic, and they were gonna be training their field crew to start also doing the sewer system maintenance, and they'd have to expand the crew, of course, to do that. And I suggested that, well, gee, if they do that, maybe we could contract with them, and they kinda liked that idea. But then I never heard anything further on it.
And Clemens talked to me about that. I never understood his proposal. Because at the end of the day, to clean your sewer system, you need a sewer cleaning truck, and they
Well,
don't have one.
Sam might have a couple available.
Right.
Yeah, sounds like it.
When I talked to Beverly about it, I said I'd rather give her time to look at the collections crew and hopefully enact changes to correct deficiencies. That's where I'm at.
Well, can you get an explanation of why eliminating a 5.5 FTE department
No, I
results in
can't.
three FTE layoff?
I cannot. Could not get it from Steve Leonard. Cannot get it now.
I think that knowing the answer to that is gonna seriously influence the direction that we go in.
Yeah, clearly. Okay, that's it for Sam? All right, and we move to consent. Would anyone like to hold anything for discussion?
I move approval of consent agenda items 5, January 21st, 2016 minutes, item 6, February 26th warrants for $213,151.78. Item 7, January 2016 financial statements. Item 8, approval of assessment district distribution number 5-15/16. And 9, approval of progress payment number 2 to J. Howard Engineering for $142,040.73.
I second that.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Oh, okay, no discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. That jumped us right to number 10, reports and seminars, conferences, or committee meetings. Any,
Rick, did I miss a CSDA chapter meeting somewhere in the last couple months?
It's a long story.
Okay, was there such a meeting?
There was not a meeting.
Okay, because I
You
couldn't
did not
find any.
miss the February meeting.
What?
You did not miss the February
Okay,
meeting.
because I scoured email, junk folders, everything, I could not find
I
any
can
email.
chat with you later about that if you like.
Okay.
all right. Item 11, attorney's report.
Well, we actually do have a report, and Natalie's going to give it. It's about one piece of legislation that's been introduced.
Why do I feel the report would be 16 minutes?
Yes, but.
Speak
may-
fast.
Maybe
it's
I shouldn't
10%
tell you
of the-
right now, those clocks are typically fast.
Yeah, what clock are we going by?
My clock.
My mother liked to say that a man with a watch knows what time it is, a man with two is never sure.
Should have been done by now if you guys weren't just joking around.
Yeah.
Yeah, who's really
Yeah.
trying to out? So, what I wanted to talk about is a proposed assembly bill. It was introduced on January 25th related to the Public Records Act. So, as you know, under the Public Records Act, you're required to make public records available for inspection unless an exemption from disclosure applies. So an exemption would be something like, you know,
Certain
attorney-client
personnel
privilege
things.
or something. So,
What's the bill number?
the AB 1707.
1707.
So it's a proposed amendment to section 6255 of the government code. So currently, under this section of the government code, if a member of the public makes a written request for, to inspect public records, the public agency is required to make a written response, either approving or denying the request. So under this amendment, the agency must respond to any request, not just a written request, in writing, and that written response should include, if there's documents withheld for some reason, those documents must be identified either by their title or description, and the specific exemption must be specified that applies to
Meaning
that
the
record.
code section number that exempts it.
Yeah, the section number, or under this section, sometimes you can withhold disclosing a record if it outweighs the public interest. So that could be an exemption as well, that has to be specified. So as of now, the only action that you can take on this is to put it on a future agenda if there's any action that you'd like to take. Any questions?
Is there any action that is potentially appropriate for us to take?
Well, there's the potential of, you know, if you're interested in putting your opinion on it either way.
Okay, so I'll go read that, and if I think that we want to take a position, I'll bring that to the board president in plenty of time before the next board meeting.
So right now, all such requests have to be in writing? Public requests?
No.
or-
No. Public Records Act request does not have to be in writing.
The
Most agencies require it to be in writing, but the Public Records Act doesn't require that.
Well, that's what you said, the responses have to be in writing, right, from the agency.
So,
Well, the responses have to be in writing.
If it was requested in writing, this is gonna change it to say, even if it was an oral request,
Yeah.
the response has to be in writing.
So what says that some gadfly just stands up and claims they called and left a message that they wanted X, Y, and Z records and never heard anything?
Or where it gets interesting is social media, you know, somebody does a tweet or Facebook post, is that the same thing as an email, you know? Because that's something that can be easily, especially agencies that are dealing with a lot of, you know, communication.
I don't think something out in the ether can be treated as a request to the agency.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you're the party making the request, it probably behooves you to make it more formally if you're actually gonna take it to court
Yeah,
if you
I
don't
guess
get your response.
Yeah.
but I will say that this change is ambiguous in that way because it changes the wording from a response to a written request for inspection or copies to a response to any request for inspection or copies. So I guess there's a potential for leaving that door
More
open.
work for lawyers.
Well, the thing that's gonna be most interesting about this is that to date, you could just say, we are withholding, we are not disclosing some documents because we think they're real. But you don't have to say what documents, you don't have to say what your ground is. So that's the change, the primary change, I think, that is
Intent.
intended here.
Well, it might be a reasonable bill. Maybe.
All right, thank you.
Use government and reasonable in the same sentence.
I said maybe.
Oh, okay.
I said might and maybe.
All right, item 12, general manager's report.
Nothing further.
Item 13, administrative staff report.
Nothing further to
I
report.
have a question on that.
Sure.
Under permits issued, there's a permit to TDR Properties for a 3385 square foot parcel.
It was approved under the name of DeRosa. a while back. It was actually,
Previous variance.
yeah, there was a variance. I thought I noted that on there, that there was a variance. Yeah, I probably know, the project for the permit above obtained a sewer permit variance on 10/16/14. It was under a different name though, I think that's why you don't recognize it.
Okay. Well, as long as it did go through the variance
Yeah,
process.
I'll make sure of that, if it's substandard.
And call everybody's attention to the repairs in laterals this year, roots, and roots.
We actually issued
Trees.
Yeah, but it only happens on the streets that the county won't pave.
Well, how close is the correlation with these recurrent, the same blocks happening and our CIP? Have we been replacing these pipes and we still have
Well, the
roots?
CIP replacement is based on our CCTV that we did however many years ago, and we've got that 5-year program, or maybe 6-year program.
Wasn't the TVing done 10 or 11 or 12 years ago?
But problems are still there.
Well, this goes back to my question about Sam. Are they doing TV and
Well,
are
why
we
don't you
getting the
ask-
results?
No,
Why don't
they're
you
not.
ask how many months in the last 5 years Sam has had a working TV camera? Delia?
Sam is not, and you must have been talking to Delia, Sam is not doing TVing, and to a large extent, nor do I want them doing TVing. We're having
Oh,
trouble,
really?
we're having trouble with cleaning, so
Oh.
let's walk before we run. So let's get that straightened out, then if we think they can do that.
They do have a push camera now, but they're not
It's not,
using it.
it's not a
routinely.
camera.
Yeah. It's not.
All right. Hmm.
And they can't use it on laterals either.
Item 14, engineers report. Chuck, do you have any comments?
Nothing further than what they've written. I know you had correspondence with Delia on the Marauder Road issue, so John Rayner sent me an email discussing what our options are, so we're gonna put something together for a future board meeting.
Okay.
Saying, here's what we've got, here's potential solutions, that bridge area roads further and whatnot, so that'll be on a future agenda.
Can I read this paragraph out loud for our viewing audience?
Which one?
The bluff erosion of Marauder Road?
Sure.
Erosion, so this is a report from the district's engineer, John Rayner, dated, it just says February 2016. Erosion of the bluffs along Marauder Road was observed on 20th and 23rd of January 2016 and on 10 February 2016. The sewer line does not appear to be in danger at this point. A manhole adjacent to the bridge is within 8 feet of the eroded slope. The area will be monitored over the next few weeks. Monitoring frequency will depend on weather, tide, and swell forecasts. And I'll also mention to the board that I try and go out like after every major storm and see if the road is still there.
Well, I'm assuming this means that before it gets 0 feet from that manhole, they're gonna let us know.
Well, think about this. CCWD's water line is at least this far closer to the ocean than our sewer main. So we know which thing fails first. And then the buildings get red tagged and we don't have to worry about the sewer line. Did you ask, John to start thinking about how to gravity flow what currently still goes over the bridge?
That's what we're talking about.
Oh, okay.
Talking about a global solution to that issue.
Got it.
All right, that gets us through the agenda, and this meeting is adjourned.
Let's go.